A loyal stray dog saves baby from kidnapping. In the bustling city of Riverside, the afternoon sun cast long shadows over a crowded supermarket parking lot. The air was filled with the usual sounds of a busy day: car doors slamming, shopping carts rattling, and children laughing. Amid the activity, no one noticed a lone stray dog who wandered from car to car, sniffing the ground in search of scraps. His caramel-colored fur was matted, his body lean from a life of scavenging, and he bore a small tear in one ear, a mark from the rough life he led on the streets. Despite his scruffy appearance, there was an intelligence in his dark eyes and a quiet dignity about him. For as long as anyone could remember, this dog, who some locals had nicknamed Sparky, had made the parking lot his territory. Though he had no official owner, Sparky had a habit of watching over the people who came and went, following families from a distance, always watchful. Some children tried to pet him, but he was cautious and only let the occasional kind-hearted person close enough to feed him scraps. On this particular day, Sparky's attention was drawn to a mother, Sarah, who was loading groceries into her car while keeping an eye on her 2-year-old daughter, Lily. The little girl with blonde curls and bright blue eyes clung to her mother's leg, clutching a small stuffed bunny. Sparky observed them from a distance, his dark eyes fixed on the pair. He'd seen this little family before. Sarah always greeted him with a warm smile, and Lily often waved excitedly from her car seat. Just as Sarah turned to close the trunk, a man in a baseball cap approached her, looking as though he needed directions. His steps were calculated, and his expression overly casual as he spoke to Sarah, gesturing toward her car as if he had a question. Sarah, flustered with her hands full, smiled politely, unaware of the danger lurking in the man's intentions. But Sparky noticed. His instincts, honed from years on the street, told him this man was trouble. Sparky's body tensed, his gaze fixed on the man's every move. His eyes followed as the man's hand moved closer and closer to Lily, who had wandered a few steps away to examine a nearby shopping cart. Then, in a sudden movement, the man lunged forward and grabbed Lily's arm, attempting to pull her away from her mother's reach. Sarah spun around, her heart pounding, as she realized what was happening. "Hey, let go of my daughter!" she screamed, her voice laced with terror. At that moment, Sparky sprang into action. Without hesitation, he darted across the pavement, his paws pounding against the asphalt, growling fiercely. His caramel fur bristled, and his teeth bared as he closed in on the man with an intensity that surprised everyone nearby. The man, caught off guard by the sudden attack, stumbled backward as Sparky lunged at him, teeth snapping near his arm. Sparky bit down, holding on with a strength and determination that left the man scrambling to break free. The kidnapper let go of Lily, who fell back crying and scampered toward her mother. Sparky's growl intensified, his eyes filled with a fierce protectiveness. The man pulled away and fled, stumbling in fear as he ran toward the exit. Sparky chased after him, barking loudly, making it clear that he was a formidable defender and wouldn't tolerate any further threats. With the man gone, Sarah rushed to pick up her daughter, holding Lily close as she tried to calm her. She looked up at Sparky, who stood panting at the edge of the parking lot, watching the kidnapper disappear into the street. When he returned, Sparky's posture softened, and he approached Sarah and Lily with cautious steps, his dark eyes filled with a quiet understanding. "Thank you. Thank you so much," Sarah whispered, her voice choked with emotion as she knelt down, extending a hand to Sparky. The dog tilted his head as if understanding her gratitude and sniffed her hand cautiously. For the first time, he allowed her to scratch his ear gently. Lily, still shaken but comforted by her mother's arms, reached out her small hand to pet Sparky's head. The dog, usually wary, accepted her touch, closing his eyes briefly as he soaked in the warmth of this innocent, trusting gesture. In that moment, he wasn't just a stray anymore. He was a hero, a guardian who had saved a life. As word of Sparky's bravery spread, onlookers gathered, amazed by the story that was quickly becoming the talk of the town. Witnesses recounted the incident with admiration, sharing how Sparky had risked everything to protect a child he barely knew. A local animal rescue worker named Jenna heard about the incident and hurried to the scene. She'd seen Sparky around the area many times, always wishing she could help him, but he'd been too cautious to approach. When she saw him with Sarah and Lily, her heart softened. "Is this the dog?" Jenna asked, crouching down as she extended a hand toward Sparky, who sniffed it, seeming to recognize her. "Yes, this is him," Sarah said, her voice filled with admiration. "He saved my daughter's life." Jenna gently stroked Sparky's fur, feeling a swell of gratitude and admiration for the brave dog. "I've been trying to help him for months," she said. "He's been on his own, but maybe he's finally found a family." Sparky looked up at Jenna, his eyes softening with a spark of trust, as if he was ready to accept the kindness she offered. And as Sarah smiled at him, Sparky sensed he wasn't just a stray anymore. He was part of their family, if he wanted to be. Days passed since the daring rescue in the Riverside parking lot, and Sparky had become something of a local legend. News about the heroic stray dog spread quickly, with newspapers and online articles celebrating Sparky's bravery. People who had seen him before would stop to greet him, offering food and gentle pats on the head. But Sparky didn't seem interested in fame. His loyalty was with Sarah and little Lily, the family he had saved. Sarah couldn't stop thinking about Sparky. Every time she replayed the terrifying moment when Lily was nearly taken, her heart clenched with gratitude for the dog who had come to their rescue. She couldn't shake the feeling that fate had brought Sparky into their lives. Each day, she drove by the supermarket to look for him, hoping he'd let her approach and perhaps bring him home. But Sparky was always elusive, keeping a respectful distance, as if unsure he belonged. Then, one bright afternoon, while Sarah and Lily were at the park, she spotted Sparky under a shady tree, watching over the playground. His caramel coat was still scruffy, and his cautious eyes scanned the area as though on guard, ready to protect. Sarah decided this was her chance. She bent down to Lily's level and whispered, "There's Sparky, sweetheart. Do you want to go say hello?" Lily's face lit up, and she nodded enthusiastically, gripping her stuffed bunny. Together they approached Sparky slowly, not wanting to spook him. Sparky watched them, his posture relaxed, but his eyes alert. When they were close enough, Sarah knelt beside him and gently offered her hand. "Hey, Sparky," she said softly. "Do you remember us?" Sparky sniffed her hand, his gaze shifting from Sarah to Lily. He recognized them, the mother and child he had protected, and there was a flicker of recognition in his eyes. Lily, still holding her bunny, reached out her small hand and touched Sparky's head, stroking his fur gently. Sparky's body softened, and his tail gave a slow, cautious wag. Sarah's heart swelled. "Would you like to come home with us, Sparky?" she asked, her voice tender. Sparky's ears perked up, and he looked at her with those deep, knowing eyes, as if weighing her offer. After a moment, he took a tentative step toward her, his expression a mixture of hope and uncertainty. Sarah's husband, Mark, was waiting for them at home, and when he heard about Sparky's heroism, he immediately agreed to welcome the dog. As they reached the house, Sparky took in his new surroundings cautiously, his nose sniffing the air as he wandered the yard. It was clear that he had never known a home before, and Sarah felt a pang of sadness for the years he had spent alone. But as she watched him inspect every corner with curiosity, she knew he was beginning to understand that this was a place he could feel safe. Inside, Sparky found a cozy bed Sarah had prepared for him, complete with a soft blanket and a few toys. To everyone's surprise, he settled into the bed without hesitation, curling up and letting out a long, contented sigh. Lily placed her stuffed bunny beside him, and Sparky rested his head next to it, as if he understood it was a gift. The days that followed were filled with Sparky's quiet but profound presence. He became Lily's constant companion, following her from room to room, his eyes watchful and attentive. She would read him stories, whispering her favorite parts, and Sparky would sit beside her, his head tilted as though he were listening to every word. At night, he would curl up outside her bedroom door, guarding her as she slept. Mark, who had grown up with dogs, admired Sparky's gentle yet protective nature. They quickly developed a bond, with Mark often sitting beside Sparky on the back porch, stroking his fur while he talked about the day. "You're one of us now, Sparky," he'd say, his voice filled with appreciation. Sparky would respond with a nuzzle or a soft whine, his eyes filled with gratitude. One evening, Jenna, the rescue worker, stopped by to check on Sparky. She had been following his story, amazed at how he had transformed from a wary stray to a cherished family member. When she arrived, Sparky greeted her with a calm, friendly demeanor, as if he remembered her kindness. "It's like he was meant to be with you," Jenna said to Sarah, as they watched Sparky and Lily play together in the backyard. "He has the soul of a protector." Sarah nodded, her heart full. "I don't know what we would have done without him. He's become such an important part of our lives." Sparky's presence was not only a comfort, but a reminder of the loyalty and courage he had shown when it mattered most. Sarah and Mark often reflected on how they had gained more than just a pet. They had gained a true friend, a guardian who had chosen them as his family. But even as Sparky embraced his new home, Sarah noticed that he remained vigilant, especially around the perimeter of the yard. If a stranger approached, Sparky would position himself between them and the house, his eyes never leaving the person until they were gone. It was as though he understood that his job was to protect, and he was always ready to defend his family if the need arose. One night, while everyone was asleep, Sparky heard a noise outside. His ears perked up, and he stood alert. Slowly he walked to the door, his body tense as he listened. Sensing something was wrong, he let out a low growl, waking Mark and Sarah. Mark quietly approached the door, peering outside to see a shadow moving near the edge of their property. As the figure drew closer, Sparky's growl grew louder, and he positioned himself in front of the door, ready to defend. Mark called out, startling the stranger, who immediately ran off into the night. Sparky's body relaxed, and he looked up at Mark with calm assurance, as if to say, "I've got this." The family marveled at Sparky's instincts, realizing just how lucky they were to have him. He was more than just a stray who had found a home. He was a guardian who took his role seriously. Sparky's story continued to spread throughout the neighborhood, and many people began to see him as a symbol of courage and loyalty. But for Sparky, the greatest reward was the love and safety he had found with his new family. The streets were no longer his home. He had a place where he belonged, where he was valued and loved. Little did they know, Sparky's bravery would soon be tested once more. As autumn rolled into Riverside, the warm colors of changing leaves filled the air with a sense of peace and comfort. For Sparky, life in the Williams family had become a dream he hadn't known he was waiting for. Every day was filled with joyful routines, morning walks with Mark, playtime with Lily, and cozy evenings by the fire with Sarah. Sparky had settled into his role as guardian, and the family felt complete with him around. But one October night, Sparky's vigilance would face its greatest challenge yet. The night began as any other. Lily was asleep in her room, with Sparky curled up by her door. The house was quiet, the only sounds the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the occasional rustling of leaves outside. But around midnight, Sparky's ears perked up. He sensed something, a faint but distinct presence just beyond the yard. Sparky rose quietly, his body tense as he walked to the front door. Peering out the window, he saw a shadow moving near the far end of the property. His hackles raised, and he let out a low growl, alerting Mark, who had just gone to bed. Mark joined Sparky at the window and caught a glimpse of someone moving suspiciously near the garage. "Stay here, boy," Mark whispered, though he knew Sparky wasn't going anywhere. Mark grabbed his phone to call the local police, explaining that a stranger was lurking around his home. They assured him that officers would arrive shortly. But Sparky, feeling the urgency of the situation, was already moving. His body remained tense, and his senses were heightened. He darted toward the back door, slipping out before Mark could stop him. Sparky approached the figure in the yard, his steps silent and steady. He positioned himself between the intruder and the house, letting out a deep, resonant bark that echoed through the night. The intruder, a young man dressed in dark clothing, froze, clearly startled by Sparky's sudden appearance. He tried to back away, but Sparky stepped forward, blocking his path, his eyes fierce and unwavering. The man hesitated, clearly unsure of what to do. In that moment, Sarah, who had woken up from the commotion, looked outside and saw Sparky standing protectively before the stranger, his gaze locked on the man as if daring him to move any closer. As the tension mounted, the sound of approaching sirens cut through the stillness of the night. The intruder, realizing he was out of options, turned and bolted, disappearing into the darkness just as the police car pulled up. Mark and Sarah rushed outside, calling for Sparky. The officers stepped out of the car, assessing the scene and reassuring the family that they'd increase patrols in the area. One of the officers knelt down to pat Sparky on the head. "You're a brave one, aren't you?" he said, smiling. "Good job, buddy." Sparky wagged his tail, but his gaze remained serious. He trotted back to Lily's room as if to check that she was still safe, and only then did he finally relax, curling up outside her door once more. That night, he kept one eye open, making sure his family was secure. In the days that followed, the Williams family became even more grateful for Sparky's protective instincts. He wasn't just a dog to them. He was their guardian, their hero, and a true member of their family. Mark installed extra security lights around the property, though he knew Sparky would always be the best defense they could have. As Halloween approached, Sarah decided it was time for a special celebration in Sparky's honor. They threw a small party with friends and neighbors, complete with dog-friendly treats and a brand new collar engraved with the words, "Sparky, our hero." When the day of the party arrived, Sparky was the center of attention. Neighbors came by to pet him, children played with him, and he even wore a little cape that Lily had made for him, turning him into Super Sparky for the day. Though Sparky didn't care much for costumes, he wore the cape with pride, enjoying the attention and affection that surrounded him. But what mattered most to Sparky was that he had found his place. No longer wandering the streets in search of scraps or shelter, he had a home and a family who loved him unconditionally. His loyalty had found a purpose, and the love he received in return filled his heart with a warmth he had never known. As the party drew to a close and the sun set over Riverside, Sparky sat with his family, looking out over the yard he had once guarded so fiercely. He felt a sense of calm, knowing he was exactly where he was meant to be. For the Williams family, Sparky was more than a pet. He was a reminder that love and loyalty could appear in the most unexpected ways, and that sometimes a stray could become a hero.